Okay, tax wars, Deuteronomy 14. When God was establishing civil laws for his people, he required of them, "You shall surely tithe all the produce from what you sow, which comes out of the field every year." Deuteronomy 14:22. The tithe was 1/10, 10% of the annual income of every citizen, and it functioned as a tax or a levy on the people. From the proceeds of that tax, officials were paid and social programs operated. See Deuteronomy 26:12. Frequently across the Bible, the requirement to pay a tithe is repeated. Leviticus 27:30, 32, and 2 Chronicles 31, 5-12. Significantly, under this Bible plan, everyone paid the tax at the same rate. Whether someone was rich or poor, the percentage was the same. If a man made $1 million, his tithe or tax was $100,000. And if a man made $100, his tithe or tax was $10. Under this uniform tax, the rich paid more than the poor in actual amount, but each was treated exactly the same under the law, which is the definition of justice. As Jesus affirmed, this impartially is a reflection of the character and nature of God. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Matthew 5:45. Evil or good, just or unjust, rich or poor, God was impartial. This Bible system of taxation is known as capitation taxation, which is an assessment levied by the government upon a person at a fixed rate, regardless of income or worth. This system was placed into the U.S. Constitution. No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. Article 1, Section 9. Founders required the federal taxes be applied evenly to every person, divided equally based on the census population numbers. The Constitution likewise required the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, but all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Article 1, Section 8. But in the late 1800s, a dramatically different system of taxation was advocated under the rise of progressivism and post-structuralism, two parallel anti-biblical paradigms that teach citizens to view themselves not as a part of the country as a whole, but rather as a part of some group, whether black or white or brown, gray or straight, rich or poor, young or old, union or non-union, etc. This worldview regularly pits one group against another, as when Congress passed hate crime laws protecting some groups, gays and lesbians, or minority races such as Jews or African Americans, but not others, veterans and seniors. Rather than having all laws applied equally to everyone. In the past, America was summarized by the Latin phrase on the Great Seal of the United States, e pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one, an expression acknowledging that although there was much diversity in America, there was a common unity that overcame all differences. But progressivism and post-structuralism reverse that emphasis to become e unum pluribus, that is, out of one, many, thus dividing the nation into separate groups with no unifying commonality. Under this approach, in 1894, Congress passed a tax that singled out the wealthy and treated them differently from others, but some citizens, still retaining a biblical view, objected. As U.S. Congressman Justin Morrill, 1810 to 1898, had earlier explained, in this country, we neither create nor tolerate any distinction of rank, race, or color, and should not tolerate anything else than entire equality in our taxation. And that understanding was widespread. 1895, the Supreme Court properly struck down that in 1894 a law was being in direct violation of the clear wording of the Constitution. At that time, Supreme Court Justice Stephen Field warned that such attacks would literally change the face of America, accurately predicting it. This tax will be but the stepping stone to others, larger and more sweeping, till our political contest will become a war of the poor against the rich, a war constantly growing in intensity and bitterness. Progressives and post-structuralists, following their defeat at the hands of the Constitution, began advocating a constitutional amendment to change the biblical approach to a non-biblical one. Under their proposal, the rich would be treated differently from the poor through the system of progressive taxation, which takes a higher proportion of large incomes than of small ones. In 1913, that proposal was ratified as the 16th Amendment to the Constitution, thus permitting the practice of uniform and capitation taxation to be replaced with the progressive approach, which is what Congress now regularly and even aggressively pursues, pitting one group against the other and inciting class warfare that further divides the country. Nevertheless, America's original system of taxation treated Americans as individuals rather than a part of a group, and it allowed, figuratively speaking, for the sun to rise alike on the good and the evil, and the rain to fall equally on the just and the unjust. This is just one of the many areas in which the Constitution specifically incorporated biblical principles. We would do well to return to the wisdom that God established for how to order our society. Forsaking it only invites destruction.